Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. How to be your own archaeologist. Hi, friends. It's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me, and I have my good friend Carrie West with us. She is amazing. You are going to love this episode. So I suggest you get your tea or your coffee, sit down, maybe your weighted blanket, be all ready for a great conversation. Because the first time I ever spoke to Carrie, we hit it off with all kinds of very similar stories about how to free ourselves from that bondage of human ignorance. And so we are going to have a great conversation. And as we all know, it's going to go wherever it goes. But here's what I know for sure, that we are all like archaeologists, digging and looking, and we all love to dive deep into things. Well, what if we dove deep into our own reality, to our own world? Carrie's going to talk to us about that today. So Carrie, welcome to the show, to Someone Gets Me. And thank you so much for taking valuable time out of your life to be here with us. I so appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to it ever since that first call we had. I've been looking forward to the days when I could sit down and talk with you again.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun.
Yes.
And so I'd like to start off a little bit about how come the word archaeologist kind of fits for you. Like, we know it fits for me a little bit, but how come it fits for you so much?
Well, I love what you said about how we always dig deep. And what better place to look deep than in our own lives? Can you become an archaeologist of your life? And I would suggest that you need to. You need to. So many times we think that the world out there affects us, when I would argue that we are affecting the outside world. And we need to understand, what is it about our personal narrative, story, thinking, believing, whatever you want to call it, that is generating this reflection that is our world.
Oh, that's great. So now I have an immediate question. They're all in my head. I don't know what to do. Which one to ask her first? Okay. So
Okay.
I totally agree with you. And what about people, or what would you say to someone who's listening who is profoundly gifted and an empath, who actually can physically and emotionally feel the environment? And so how would they manage that? Because I think there's kind of like this little balancing act. So how would you suggest to people, if they're the empaths who are actually naturally equipped to feel the outside world, but yet they know it's their inner dialogue and beliefs and landscape that create their world? So how does somebody deal with both of those at the same time?
I actually think empaths, for how gorgeous they are and the gifts that they have, may have a little bit of a tougher job with this, because it's sometimes difficult, not always, to separate where does the internal start and stop, and where does that reflection come into play. And I think for a lot of empaths, and I'm empathic, so I feel that often something happens, and I can go into a tailspin, and I have to really get active and take a deep breath and say, okay, is this me, or am I picking it up?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's really good. Yeah.
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Where is this coming from?
Right. I always ask, whose is this?
Exactly,
Is it mine,
exactly,
or is it something or
exactly.
someone else's? Yeah.
Especially if you're close to somebody. And I don't know if I was in grad school, and I'm sitting in my dorm room, and I started sobbing out of the blue, and I thought, what the heck is going on here? 5 minutes later, my sister called me in tears. And I thought, well, thank you. At least I know why I'm sobbing. As soon as she did, I stopped crying. So when you have that happen, it's really important to pay attention. It's really important to know who you are, and be able to, and be willing to say, this isn't mine.
Right. Right. And to have that boundary, that inner boundary where I don't have to take it on. If it's not mine, I don't have to take it on. Even though in
Yes.
this culture, a lot we're taught to take it on. That's a lie that we're taught.
It's especially women,
Yes.
especially women,
Yes.
especially women. We are taught to take care of the world.
Yes. And we have to put that oxygen mask on ourselves first.
Yes.
And so I have something that goes with this that came from our conversation that I think is really important. And that is the whole idea of having awareness. I work with a lot of people and in different groups and different arenas. And even when I worked a lot in the recovery world, it was like, you have to tell the truth. And I was like, yes. And you have to have awareness in order to be able to tell the truth. You have to be willing to allow awareness to happen and honor that awareness. So, speak a little bit about how somebody who's seeking to have better awareness, what could they do to get started, or what are some ideas that you have about the whole idea of having to have awareness before you get going? Because if you don't know what you're doing, it's very difficult.
This is where the juice is. Isn't it? The
Oh,
awareness
yes.
is where the juice is. It's the critical part of this main transformation because you can't change something you don't know you have. So awareness is juice. It is the heart and soul of this process. And that's why the archaeology, and this is also the empath, you need that awareness. So what I suggest is there's a few ways. When you have a lot of repeated patterns. If you've ever noted, if you've ever caught yourself saying, "Why does this always happen to me? Why do I always get in the wrong line at the grocery store? Why does the minute I move into another line of traffic, it slows down?" When you ask yourself that question and it ends in, "This always happens to me," that's a pattern. That's a pattern. So that's where you can start looking at awareness. Another place, and this is one we run from so much, and that is when you have a crisis or a challenge.
Mhm.
Crises and challenges are designed to bring you awareness. It's almost like, the universe will tap on your shoulder. Pay attention here, pay attention. And if you go, then the universe will go, yo, pay attention here. And you go, get away from me. And then the universe is going to go, boink, pay attention. That's an awareness. That's where you really need to pay attention. So most of the people I work with now, they welcome challenges and crises. They
Right,
look for
because
them.
you get to see it. You know what analogy I use for that is you just demonstrated it perfectly. Um, and I always say to people, if you're not listening and paying attention, then the rules are this: whisper, roar, or two by four. And you get
Yes.
you get to pick whether it's a whisper, the roar, or the two by four,
Hmm.
because the message will get through, and we really don't need to have some kind of major crisis or blow up in order to get the message. So
Yeah.
when I first learned that, I started telling, whenever I was thinking or thinking about how I was going to do things and changing my thinking, I'd say, okay, all right, I will listen to the whispers. I promise I'll listen to the whispers. And I still do that every once in a while. I'm like, okay, what's whispering to me? And so it's a whisper, roar, two by four. It might start low, but if you're not listening, then it keeps coming back over and over.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So let's do a little bit of archaeology here and help us all understand, how did you come to do this kind of cool work? Like, I think your book is amazing, the programs you're doing are amazing. We'll talk about those in a minute, but personally, how did you get here? It's really amazing. I think it's great to meet somebody who has so many beliefs that are similar to mine, that really work for neurodivergent visionary empath people, that really work for us, because a
Yeah.
lot of things don't work for us. So how'd you
Yeah.
get here?
Well, I don't know if you read my book or heard any of my stories. My book includes a lot of stories from my life, and my parents rejected me, but it was at a day and age in the 1950s when you weren't allowed to put your kids up for adoption. You got your kid, you kept it. So my parents had their own challenges that I didn't know about at the time. So I was barely fed, my diaper was rarely changed, and so I had a very traumatic childhood. That led to a lot of pain, both psychologically and emotionally, and trouble with connecting to people, and especially women. I couldn't trust women, and gosh, I couldn't go on a date. I was just so shut down. And when I ended up having a brain scan in my 40s and 50s, they said my brain was very tight. It lost a lot of its elasticity, which I found fascinating. Anyway, shoot ahead to 24. I'm 24 years old. I'm home with my parents over Thanksgiving. I'm getting ready to go and hang out with a friend before I went back to my where I lived in DC. And my father said, "You know I love you, don't you?" And I was like, "What?" My father never spoke. "You know I love you, don't you?" And it's like, "Well, yeah, okay, I got to go." And I went out to see a friend. I wasn't out the door 20 minutes and I got this pain, this arching pain all over the side of my head. And I thought, "Oh my God, I can't see. My eyes were scrundled, everything." So I went home. My dad was dead. I walked out the door. My dad had a myocardial infarction and died. And I was just like, first of all, the shock of it all, I was completely gobsmacked. But how dare he? All my life, I just wanted him to even see me. And he finally says, "I love you." And then he dies. I mean, I hit rock bottom. I lived on beer and nachos. I lost a lot of weight. I still don't know how I kept my job at the time. I have no idea how I would drive sometimes. I would drink. I mean, I lived on cases of beer. And I finally said, I got to do something about this. I am right now on a path of self-destruction. I will die, and I will die miserably and maybe even take people with me because I was drinking and driving.
Mm.
So I tried everything. I went to my priest. I went to a rabbi. It sounds like a joke, a priest and a rabbi and a medicine man. It's really not a joke. I went to personal growth workshops. I went to metaphysics. I went to anything that opened the door, and I hated them all. I was cynical about everything. I questioned everything. I never believed what anybody told me. I didn't have the ability to trust.
Right.
So, by some stroke of genius, I was accepted into film school. And I did it because I always wanted to be a storyteller. I was telling myself stories to stay alive as a baby. I told the story of how my real parents were looking for me and I had this beautiful life. It was that imagination and hope that kept me alive as a kid. And I got into film school, and one day we're going through the whole layout of how a story works, the themes, the plots, the characters. And I just had this epiphany, and I said, huh, my life is a story. It's a
Mm.
crappy story, but it's a story. And if I can see how they rewrite these stories, and if you ever work in the industry and you see how they change a script, I used to read some of the most amazing scripts and I'd watch how they unfolded when you turned it into a movie. It's an incredible process. But I saw, every day when they show up, the first thing they say is, "Where are today's rewrites?" So they change dialogue, they change motivations of the characters. They even add characters back and forth as they need it. And I love that flexibility. So I started excavating. That's why when you said archaeology, that's what I did. I went on an archaeological dig. And I wanted to understand my parents, who had both been dead at that point for 10, 15 years each. And I I understood them better. I found out about their problems and their stories and why I wasn't a broken, flawed person who was damaged beyond repair. I had parents who were stuck in their stories and couldn't do anything about it, didn't have the skills or the tools, so I could forgive them. And I just went from there. I kept digging and digging and digging and learning more about who they were and shifted my perception about my life,
Mm.
shifted how I saw my life. I had all these beautiful gems that I dug up from my past, and I lined them up and I said, huh, okay, I can shift how I relate to them. I
Mhm.
didn't change it, but I understood it and I shifted it. And I even thanked it because as a result of it, I had some great skills. I'm a very determined person. I'm pretty smart and I can figure stuff out, and I'm a fantastic storyteller. So all of that contributed to who I am today. But it wasn't until I went on that excavation tour that I uncovered all these things about me, good, bad, and ugly. And it's so funny when people meet me today and they hear about what I went through, they don't believe me. They think I'm making it all up. They think I'm a storyteller. I made it all up. Nope, that was my life.
Yeah, well, that's the original story.
That's the back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's my origin story.
yeah, yeah.
So that's my story. That's how I applied those principles of excavation to me. But it wasn't until I hit rock bottom.
Well,
And
that and you know what else I hear that's very interesting is the solution for you
mhm.
came in a non-traditional way so your ego couldn't defend against it. So the
Oh, please,
cynical part
yes.
of you couldn't defend against the things that were supposed to help you. I mean, you were going to school for God's sakes. And so, it
Yeah.
that information and that skill could drop in without your ego being so well defended that you stopped it,
And yeah,
you
and here's
know?
the other thing. Exactly, exactly. It's a very good point. But and here's the other point too. Anyone who goes to personal development workshops, it's a pain. It's a lot of work. It's like you must write down every day 15 things that you're thinking about. When you can view your life as this story that you just want to understand and you want to dig into understanding the characters and what was the theme and the plots, that was a lot more fun for me.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And it was personal development, but it wasn't called that so that you
Yeah.
couldn't be defensive toward it,
Oh no, I couldn't
you
resist
know?
it. I couldn't.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't challenge it. I couldn't, because that's something that I developed with my upbringing was, yeah, prove it. So as soon as people would say that to me, the turtle would come up and I'd go, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
prove it. So you're right. It was all it 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 allowed me to go step outside my boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it was safe because it was school.
Yeah, yeah, it was safe. Oh, and it was so much fun.
Oh, it sounds like a blast.
So,
You
and
know,
I,
I've had big epiphanies. I was sitting in graduate school and one of my professors were talking to somebody else in the front of the room and I had just walked in getting ready for class and I was standing there and I don't even remember what they're talking about. But one of them said something. I don't even remember exactly the thing today, but I was like, "Oh, that's what it is." And then I just dove deep into understanding more and more and more and more, whatever the issue was that I can't remember today, because it seems like another lifetime. But I remember the epiphany that went with
yeah,
overhearing a conversation that had nothing to do with me, but the sentence totally applied. So my ego couldn't defend from it
yeah.
or dismiss it away or whatever, because it like kind of accidentally on purpose got in.
But see, sometimes I think those are just the little gifts that are given to you.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I
The
totally
little
do.
gifts.
Like film school. I mean,
Yeah.
so totally see that, and that being willing to and able to check out those deeper narratives, the deeper stories, the things, and also with the other players in the movie, in the story, because
Oh
it
yeah.
wasn't just
Oh yeah.
it's not just us, it's all of the players, and so that stuff is so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's really cool. So, with all of these things that you've learned your whole life and everything, I'm really curious personally, what does Carrie do for your own fun, leisure, relaxation? Like, what do you do for you?
Boy, I'll tell you one of my favorite things is travel.
Mm,
I love going to new places and meeting new people and new cultures and seeing um, how they live. That's something I think is important. When you stick with the familiar, which we all have a tendency to do, you stay with the familiar, forget that there's this whole world out there for you. Sorry, a bird just flew into my office.
a bird flew into your
There's a,
office.
yep, a robin flew into my office.
Nice.
I'm freezing a little bit here. Hold on a second. Let me shut some stuff down. But yeah, I was growing up, I remembered that people did the same things over and over again.
Hmm.
And I'm a big proponent of getting out of your own space. When you are stuck in the familiar, because let's face it, change is scary because it implies the unknown, and we don't know what'll really happen in our lives if you change. Does that mean my relationship will end? Does that mean I'll lose friends? Does it mean my kids will hate me? Does it mean my kids will love me? So you deal with this discomfort, and we do a lot to resist that. So I intentionally set myself on a trip, even if it's just to get on an airplane and fly away and fly right back, just to break up the day because that jazzes me. And even though I feel it all the time, as oh, I gotta pack and oh, I gotta go to the airport.
Uh-huh.
But once I get on the airplane and I'm gone, everything just opens up. So I love to do that. It just expands my awareness of other people and other ways of being.
Right. Yeah. Oh, totally. Definitely.
That's one of my favorite things to do.
So what do you do when you're home on a day-to-day basis for yourself?
Uh, I have a wonderful dog. We go for walks all the time. I sit in my garden. It's amazing. I came from a tiny house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania that had 6 people in it, and I live in this beautiful home in Santa Barbara now with me and Simon and the puppy. Puppy thinks it's his house, and we just live there because he lets us, but that's okay. But we just remodeled it, so that was a lot of fun. Believe
Oh,
it or
yes.
not, it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it immensely. And we redid our garden, and it's gorgeous. So I have this lovely, lovely space that I can just sit in and be, and I go out there to read. I love to read. I probably have
Mhm.
4 or 5 books that go all at any one time. So those are my two things. I'm thinking of taking up painting again. I used to do chalk drawings. And
Mhm.
now I've been thinking about doing that again.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
I like getting my hands dirty with the chalk. I like smushing stuff around, so the chalk is the way to do it.
Yeah, I run a preschool and I used to love doing finger painting
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
with the kids. It was so fun.
yeah.
It's like, let's get dirty. In fact, I was just planting cherry trees right before this interview, and I'm like, I better wash my hands really good so that I don't have dirt under my
Hey,
hands.
hey, I love playing in the dirt. I always did, and that's why I like my garden so much. I get to play in the dirt.
Yeah, well, it's so grounding too and healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
it was probably part of your survival skills,
Probably. I hadn't thought of it
probably,
that way, but yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, what prompted you to write the book?
COVID.
Oh,
This
COVID.
this is one of those things where if you stop listening to the tap on the shoulder, you're going to get thunked upside the head. Um,
Hmm.
I had been servicing and working with corporate clients, and I would never tell them what I was doing, but it was always about, in corporate world, they call it change management, to understand where they call it, understand your present state and what's your future state and how do you get there. That's what they call it in corporate world. And I always called it in understanding what's getting in your way. That's the awareness, and then how do we shift that so that you can have the stuff you want in your business. So COVID happened and all my contracts dried up, lost all my business. And I was like, so what am I going to do? And someone said, Carrie, write the book. And I did it as a lark because oftentimes when I would be in meetings, I wrote 3 books sitting in corporate meetings when people were having their discussions that are going on and on. And I wrote 3 books then. So I said, all right. And I called it Memoir of an Ordinary Person. And my editor said, no one's going to buy a book about an ordinary person. And by the way, you're not an ordinary person. And I said, well, but I didn't take my humble beginnings and turn them into being a major athlete or a movie star or anything like that. I'm not an A-list celebrity. I'm just me. And they said, that's even better because people can relate. And we all love to hear a celebrity's backstory, but not a whole lot of people think they'll achieve that level of fame. Maybe you can help them see that they will be able to achieve a level of happiness that they didn't think they could do. So then we went on this journey to figure out the name. And I kept thinking about that comment about every day they would ask for today's rewrites. Where are today's rewrites on the studio when you're
Right.
getting ready to film? What are today's rewrites? And I said, well, I'm rewriting my life. So it's like, oh, life rewritten. Okay, there you go. So that's how it happened.
Oh, well, that's great.
It was
That's a
my
great
editor
title.
hating, yeah, my editor hated my title, Memoir of an Ordinary Person. She hated it. And that's when I went to Life Rewritten. But it was COVID that took all my other reasons why not away from me. Well, I can't do it now. I got a client. I can't do it now. The reasons why not, whenever you say the two things we talked about in the beginning about why does this always happen is one clue, and the other clue is why don't I'll get to it another day. I can't do it today. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. I'm too. That's another clue that you need to pay attention. So,
Mhm. So there was a little cosmic readjustment, and the 2x4 clocked you. And look at the beautiful things that you've created. Then the book,
yeah,
and then more.
yeah.
So that's really pretty amazing, if you ask me. You know.
Well, and it's just living proof that when you really pay attention and going back to your, I love that archaeology and just
Mhm.
dig deep, go for the dig
Mhm.
and figure it out. Here's something else I learned. Life might not be fair, but it's responsive.
Mhm. Yep.
When
Mhm.
you start telling life this is what you're going to do, life will. That's why I mean it's an internal job. When you start saying, okay, life, I'm going to do this, then life will start giving you pathways. You have to find them. Sometimes they aren't clear pathways right in front of your face, but they're there.
Mhm.
They are there.
I always say, tell me in a way I can understand. Because there's so many times I get the messages and like I didn't get it. Like years ago, I'd go, I'm not getting this. And then finally, I don't even know how it started. I'm like, now I'm willing to say, do whatever it is, but you have to tell me in a way I can understand, universe, because otherwise I'm going to miss it. And then I'll get frustrated and then I'll miss it again. So if you just tell me in a way I can understand, we can cut through all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I laugh every time I say it. Like, tell me in a way I can understand. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now I'm the same way. It's like, please, I want to get this before you have to get that two by four out. Because I've had too many of these two by fours. I got a little dent the side of my head here from when I got hit too many times.
Right. I know, and we don't need any more 2x4s. So I want to
No.
shift a little bit to something that's related to this archaeology thing, and it's something that I know that matters to you and I think it's important, and that is belief systems.
Mm,
And like 75% of our belief systems are instilled in us before we're two. So for most people, some gifted people, not so much, but for most people, they're nonverbal. And so when
hmm
we're digging in our archaeology self, we're looking for things that are nonverbal. So the quandary for a verbal gifted person is the belief system that culturally, at least, that if you can talk about it, then you're good. So talk alone fixes it, which doesn't. And so what can we do to help people uncover some of those deeper beliefs or be able to start seeing how those nonverbal deep beliefs are really affecting their world?
Oh, you're gonna love this, I think. Most of our beliefs happen through observation, just like you said. They're preverbal, they're observation. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of those situations where do as I say, not as I do. And that never works.
Never.
That never works. So I will always suggest to people that you create a map. In fact, it's in my first book. Create a map of who are the key people in your life. Your mom, your dad, your siblings, any extended family, and what were they about the day you were born? What was their story? Because remember, when you're born, it's like you walk into a play in the second act.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole story has been unwinding for decades in some cases, and you don't know any of the players. If you have siblings, they've been in it for a few years, depending on ages. But your birth order, anything like that, and understand what your parents were going through. Were they happy? Were they going through a divorce? Did they have money problems? Did they have health problems? Did they like their kids? Did they have a favorite kid? We know all these things. So this is again part of the excavation. If you're doing character development for a movie, this is exactly what you do. Is you define who your characters are. But
Mm-hmm.
what you find out is they have these belief systems because the next step is take it a step further. How did your parents relate to their parents? What were your grandparents like on both sides? What about aunts and uncles? What were those relationships like? And you start to build this picture of your childhood. And you start to see how they interacted with each other, how they treated each other. Did your mom pay the bills or did your dad? Did your mom work? Did your dad work? Were there any health issues? When you can get into that nitty-gritty detail, you'll start to see why you have the beliefs that you do. Because silently, they will let you know that this is how life works. They don't even have to say it, but through
Mhm.
observing what they're doing and how they live their lives, you know how life works. When you observe how they pay for their bills, when you observe how they react to the grocery store when they're buying their groceries, when you observe how they when I was growing up, gas was 23 cents a gallon and it went up to 25 cents a gallon. And my dad was beside himself. How do they expect us to pay for gas when it's 25 cents a gallon? He didn't have to say anything to me about being how he felt about money. It was all right there.
Right.
He didn't have to say a word about believing about money. It was all right there.
Mhm.
That 2 cents was going to throw him for a loop on finances. So, and then the other thing that you pick up, besides observing, and this is the fastest way we get anything, and that's through their emotions.
Mhm.
When your parents have an emotion, because remember, they're larger than life. So if they get angry, hurt, sad, cry, whatever emotion, that comes back to you 100-fold because you're a little kid. You're an infant. You're depending on these
Mhm.
people. And if they're scared or angry,
Right.
you're going to be scared. You're going to feel this. You're going to go, Mom's scared. Dad's angry. What does that mean for me? But you
Mhm.
absorb all these emotions. And that's why I think some kids do shut down because it's too emotional. If you live in a house that's got a lot of emotions, your mom may have had postpartum depression. If you have all that, you don't have any way to define that as a kid. You have no clue on how to even manage it in yourself. So it gets twisted in a lot of ways. And then you fill in the gaps and you make decisions, but that becomes the foundation for the belief systems that get locked in. They don't have to stay locked in. You can tear them apart, but you have to do that archaeological dig to find out the root of them.
Right. To be able to bring them into the light to because
Yes.
there's no words that go with them, but there's experience and there's energy. And so we have to shine the light of truth on them
Yep. And
and however
understand
they're
the,
woven together and how it all looks in order, then that's where the little brushes come in.
yeah.
And that's in order to be able to start saying, okay, is this belief mine now? I mean, it was given to me. Is it one I want to
Yes.
keep? Or is it one
Yes.
I'd like to transmute and change into something that's more beneficial for my life today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I had a client who told me we were talking about money issues, and one of the big stories he had was he had to live within his means. And he said, "Isn't that a good thing that I should live within my means?" I said, "It's not a bad thing, but here's what's not said with that. When you have to live within your means, there's the underlying story that's not said that says, don't trust yourself. Don't trust that you'll be good with money. Don't trust yourself that you'll be able to make more money. Don't trust yourself that there's abundance. Don't trust. It's live within your means, put you in a box. Can you be an adult and understand that if you only have $100 in your bank account, you shouldn't go and pay cash for a $50,000 car? Well, yeah, but live within your means says you don't even try to go out and get that car.
Right. Because it's so confining and it's
Exactly.
restricting and basically says you'll never go outside of whatever that is.
Right. And then on top of that, you get the message that life is in a box,
Mm-hmm.
that there's no room for expansion, there's no room for more.
And
So,
yet the world is always expanding in unity, diversity, and complexity all the time. So
all
there's a
the time.
lie, a bold faced belief system lie that's been passed down to many of us, especially
Yes.
those of us in the United States whose ancestors and relatives went through the Great Depression and things like that, where the message was that poverty mentality. And it doesn't mean be reckless and go out there and say, oh, abundance is everywhere and be reckless. It means be a good steward. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times stewardship is not is left out of the discussion. It's
Yes.
like I'm good with money, I'm
Yes.
bad with money, or I have a lot of money, I don't
Yes.
have any money.
Yes.
Well, that
Yes.
the amount's not as important as the
Yes.
stewardship.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
We have to shift that conversation instead of keeping us constrained and controlled to within an inch of our lives to developing critical thinking patterns,
Mhm.
to expand, to use our brains. They're an incredible gift. We can think our way through these things and embrace the fact that when you're constricted, you can't see the abundance that's all around you.
Right. Well, it's kind of like you can be in the box and you're focused on the box. But then some people say, well, I'm out of the box, but they're still focused on the box. So they're still
Yes.
missing the message because they're still looking at the same box. They're just on the different side of this of the wall of the box.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's about realizing that we want to make sure there is no box. And so that's where, as a result of the dig, we begin to start saying, do we keep the box or what do we do with the box?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
might have a use somewhere else in our life, but it may not have a use there. So it's like that's where that I think that critical thinking and discernment comes in, is what's applicable today,
Yes.
given my autobiography and my way of living.
And the other thing is, I think we get afraid to be who we are,
Mm.
and with good reason. When we are born, the first thing we want is a sense of belonging. Belonging gives us safety and security. And we strive to belong in that first group we're with, and that's our family. So, how do we know we belong with the group? We think like them, we talk like them. Language is the first clue about belonging. You speak English, French, German, whatever language. When I was growing up, we had three languages in the house. I don't remember them anymore, but English, I can barely do English, but Italian and Serbian. So language is the first thing. Then what are the habits and patterns? What are the behaviors? My parents smoked like fiends. They did 3 packs of cigarettes a day. So of course I experimented. I tried them out when I was in high school. I tried cigarettes. They normalized it for me, but it gave me a sense of I know who I am, I belong with this group of people. So when we consider not only shifting change is uncomfortable because it's unknown, it means who are we going to be friends with? Where are we going to belong? So we're afraid we'll be all on our own, which is the scariest thing of all. That's genetically scary. It's in our DNA to want to be social and belong to the group.
And
So
when we're
that sense
lit-
of belonging is challenged.
and
Go
when we're
ahead.
little, Carrie, is it, it's like the little version of us is like, okay, if I don't belong here and but something happens to these people, then I don't know how to take care of myself yet. And so
Yeah,
there's that real existential fear of like, will I survive?
absolutely. I'm not saying the thing is,
Hmm.
that's the thing with belonging. It's real.
Hmm.
It's real.
Yeah.
It is survival.
Hmm.
And that's where, as we get older and we make these new choices to go off and be our authentic selves, it's important that we sit with that little person that we were and let them know that they're still safe. And in fact, they're going to be even safer. They're going to have a hell of a lot more fun and you're going to know who you are and you're going to be able to trust better because when you get into a relationship with somebody and you're being the person that you were when you were 2 years old or 10 years old, or when being that person that was comprised of all these beliefs and things that you got from your family, are you being your authentic self? And so you continue to be a chameleon and you try to do stuff to fit in with this new person or this new group of people. And are you ever really happy and satisfied? Can you really trust that they like you for who you are? I
Hmm.
have a lot of wealthy friends and they're reluctant. They think people only want to be their friends because they have money. And I said, I'm not friends with a lot of wealthy people because they're idiots, not because, I don't want their money, but they get terrified of being friends because they're constantly testing me to say, well, will you contribute to this thing I'm doing? Because that to them is, that you only wanted to be my friend because you only wanted my money. It's like, to me, that's really sad
Mhm.
that you don't think you're worthy of having friends except for your money.
And some of them have to have the guard up because the reality is people come after them all the time.
No
and
question.
and so it's like they may not believe that people only want them for their money, but does it all, where's the line, and some people have a really hard time with that. I have a hard
Oh,
time with that owning my business because I don't know, I get, I don't know, 100 emails a day with people wanting something from me. And
yeah.
the new trick is let's partner together and really, and I confronted one person one time. I go, you're not talking about partnership. You're trying to sell me something. And there's a different conversation.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and it's constant. And so when somebody actually wants to meet me and it's like real, I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with this because,
I know.
all the other people are trying to get something. They're trying to extract something. I call it
Yeah.
extortion energy, just what can I get from her? And then we'll go on to the next person if she doesn't give me what I want.
I know. I know. When I worked with celebrities in Hollywood, they had this one woman had one assistant who all they did was handle the daily requests for donations and sponsorships that this woman got. And and she was reluctant. She didn't want to be friends with many people except in the same bracket as her because she knew that they understood what she was going through. But
Right.
and to your point, when I got bestseller status for my book, you wouldn't believe how many calls I got from PR people and publishing companies. We love your message. We love what you're doing. And it's like, uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. It's every day,
Oh yeah.
every day,
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
We want to feature your book.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting emails about they want to turn my book into a movie
Ah,
and I
yes.
can have, you know, a say in how it unfolds or whatever. And I'm thinking, you want to turn my daily meditation book into a movie? This will be interesting. How's that going to work? Or whatever. And I just
Yeah.
know that it's just some canned thing. And I'm like, oh, my living word, and so we have to learn, especially as empaths and gifted people, and especially as intensely sensitive people, we
Mm-hmm.
have to
Mm-hmm.
learn those kinds of boundaries in a way that are healthy for us so that it remains fluid. Because what if somebody wants to meet us that we want to meet?
Yep. Yep.
That'll be a good conversation, like
Absolutely.
where's our discernment in all of that? And so I think it has to do with being willing to rewrite the story in a way that works for us
Mm-hmm.
as it unfolds and as we uncover things.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I think one memory leads to yet another memory, leads to another memory that we didn't remember before because of the way our brains are made. So I think that's kind of fun, you know?
Yep. I do too. I think
Yeah.
that's a really good point too.
It's all fascinating, so like we could be over here digging and then that leads us over here. That's what happened in film school for you, right? It's like
Yes.
I'm just going to
Yeah.
go to school over here and do this film school thing because that sounds fun. And then that had like these threads, that went through life and dropped you in places and offered you invitations. You didn't have
Yeah.
to take the invitation. It offered you the invitation to create your own dig and create your own story and
Yeah.
be able to do all the rewrites you wanted to and how it was going to unfold.
Yep. Yep.
And you had to say yes to the invitation.
Yes. And that's the key part. And some
Mhm.
and every time that the work hit something like it got to be drudgery or something was slowing me down, I had to have the determination to go through it,
Yep.
to know that I would come out the other side okay.
Yeah. And so that's where faith comes in. And that's where
Yes.
self care, there's lots of levels of this, as we know.
Yes.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah, and it's okay. Give yourself permission to have a hissy fit.
mhm.
Give yourself permission to not like how it's going and go and stomp your feet and run away and say I'm not doing this anymore and okay, come back
Uh,
tomorrow when you're feeling better.
I've done that.
Yeah.
I call it stamping my princess foot. And it's like, here we go. And,
I love it. I love it.
And I
But
tell all I tell the boys that their feet are bigger than mine, and so they have bigger princess feet. And they just look at me. But it's true. We're allowed to have that
yeah. Yeah.
reaction or that response. So we've
Yeah.
covered lots and lots of grounds. And so I want to know if there's anything from you that you wanted to share that we haven't talked about yet.
Well, I don't think I shared my shoe size, so let's
Yeah.
you talk about shoe size. Here's the thing. And this is where I work with my clients. I give them permission. I give them permission to be who they are. They don't have to impress me. They don't have to do what I think they should do. I really don't think they should do anything except but what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard because sometimes we think that what are they allowed to do? And when you say the world is completely open, a lot of people need some structure around that. So I give people permission to explore and to try. I have a client right now and she's like, "Well, I don't know. She was all over the place. I made all these great headways. What do I do next?" I said, "Okay, we're cutting this call short, and your assignment for our next session is I want you to explore 5 different ways you can put together that cooking show you've been talking about doing. And that way we'll find out if that's what you really want to do."
Mm-hmm.
And she just was like, but I said, get information. Don't try to have the answer now. Get information. And as you're seeking, as you're digging through the archaeology, digging through the stuff, you'll either, like you said, stay on that path, or maybe you'll jump over there, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you'll go there.
Mm-hmm.
But constantly in your head, controlling, and canoodling all this stuff keeps you stuck.
Right. It's like thrashing along. It's not going to get you
Exactly.
anywhere. Yeah.
So
So,
I give them permission to go and explore.
so give yourselves permission, everybody,
Yes. Yes.
right? To explore things and have your experience in your life because all of it is valid,
Yeah.
you know?
The other thing, if I could give one more thing,
Sure.
life was never intended to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Life is about how you respond. What do you do? How do you interpret? Because basically everything's pretty much neutral. We put the spin on it. How do you respond to the things that go on in life?
Right. So, like, if we're in a panic or we're totally excited, it's exactly the same physiologically. The only difference is the definition in our head. And
Yep.
once we realize that we're the one in charge of naming and describing and then assessing value to whatever the experience is,
Yeah.
everything shifts.
That's it.
Everything shifts. In fact, somebody told me just yesterday, you're so patient, you allow people to be themselves. I'm like, well, first of all, it's one of my gifts. And second of all, I'm not an angel drop down here to judge people. And even if I agree or disagree, that's not the point. It's not my
Hmm.
place. And I don't want to get into that kind of energy. I want to just be with people, however they
Yeah.
are and however I am and have life. That's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. This
Yeah.
judgment doesn't do anything. It
Right.
doesn't.
Just adds angst.
Yeah, it doesn't. I try to focus on things that will expand and improve, and judgments don't do that.
Exactly. They restrict more. So,
Yes.
so everybody, you've been listening to Carrie West, and I know you're really digging this show. And so, in the show notes, you will find the links to follow her and her website, and you will find her formal bio, and you will also be able to like hunt her down on social media and tell her that you heard her here on Someone Gets Me, because the best compliment you can give anybody is to let them know that you heard something that they did. So if you're thinking about it, or she says something that specially like got your attention, put a comment on this show or go find her and tell her.
Yeah.
Express the thing that you're experiencing. That's part of being an archaeologist.
I
So
love
I,
it.
I have a couple final questions for you that are my favorite questions of the show. And the
Okay.
first one is, what is the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Oh my God. I've got a
Everybody says
list. I've got a
the most
list.
memorable. Okay, you can give me a couple most memorables. That's fine.
Deep dish pizza from Chicago.
Mm.
And on the other end of the spectrum, this hot fudge sundae made with all chocolate ice cream. And the chocolate mousse ice cream and Rocky Road ice cream and hot fudge sundae. That's so I've got those are my two favorites.
Decadent for sure.
Decadent every way.
All over the place. Okay, now this question is my favorite. If we were going to put a billboard up that the whole world was going to see that has your personal specific quote, what quote would you like to see on our billboard that goes all over the world? from you.
Everything can change.
Everything can change. Like Socrates said, the only constant is change. So everything can change. I like that.
Yeah, everything can. And I promise you, everything does
It
change.
does change. The only constants change. Yes, it's true.
Yeah,
But
my
I think sometimes when we get stuck, to remember that it can change is
yeah,
huge. It's
yeah,
huge. That's a
yeah.
good one.
Everything can change. And guess what?
Mm.
Your life can change.
It,
Everybody's life can change.
mhm. In a minute.
Yeah. In a minute. Yep.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening to Someone Gets Me. Remember to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your life shine. And remember that anything and everything can change. Your life has great power. This is Carrie and Dianne saying to you to have a great day and remember to be well until the next episode of Someone Gets Me. See ya. Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episode's, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.